Mark of the Thief by Jennifer Nielsen. Chapter 15. Crispus didn't understand what he was asking. I felt nothing in the divine star, and I couldn't tell him about the bulla. So I only shook my head. I can't do magic. He obviously wasn't often told no. His voice took on a tone of irritation. You can't show me, or you won't. Frankly, both were true. But I said, there's nothing to show. I held out my hand, palm up and fingers bent. Nothing is happening. Nothing will happen because I can't do magic. This only means you haven't yet learned it. I got up off the floor and moved away from him. Even if I could do it, why should I show you? If your father was right, then I shouldn't trust anyone, including you and him. Crispus stood with me. My father can protect you. From who? General Radolf. Crispus barely spoke above a whisper. He isn't what everyone in Rome thinks. He's got more power than the Emperor, the entire military at his command, and a ruthless ambition that only those who've had to deal with him could understand. Once he knows you have magic, he won't stand for a slave boy challenging him. I'm not going to challenge him. I could admit to being foolish in life, but not stupid. Not that stupid, anyway. You may not have any choice, he said. Eventually, Radolf will find out about that mark, and when he does, nothing will stop him from coming for you. Others have learned the same lesson. Something about the way he said that made my heart skip a beat. What does that mean? It means you're not the first person to bear the divine star. Radolf has found all of them sooner or later. He pulls out their magic to make himself more powerful, then sucks out their lives along with it. He's done that to all of them, Nick. He'll do it to you, too. Did Felix know that? Because even if I gave the bullet to the Emperor, I couldn't remove the divine star from my shoulder. And if Radolf was going to come after me, then I needed to keep the bulla. Figuring out how to use what little magic still remained in it was probably my only chance to survive Radolf's eventual attack. How can your father protect me? I asked Crispus. He could train you to harness the power in the mark. I told you already, it has no power. You're not marked, so you're only guessing that it's magic. What if it's not? And what if it is? You need our help. I nodded. If your father really wants to help me, then he must free my sister Livia from the mines. That's what I need most. Crispus chewed on his lip while he considered that. If he does that for you, he will expect something in return. Of course he would, and I doubted it was anything simple. What? Crispus shrugged. Let me tell him your request, then see what he says. And for now, you stay out of Radolf's way. That seemed rather obvious, but I smiled anyway. I can definitely keep my part of the bargain. As we walked out, Crispus grabbed an apple from the market stall and gave it to me. I started to hand it back to him, but he said, They won't charge me for taking it. Just eat. I bit into it and savored the sweet crunch. They'd cut off my hand for doing that. Crispus laughed. Who will they report it to? The praetors? They won't arrest the son of a senator. Yet according to Felix, the praetors were dangerous. Did Crispus believe that too? He bid farewell to me at the top of the ramp. I tossed the apple core aside, then walked down to the end of the ramp, where Felix had worn circles in the dirt with his pacing. What did he want? Felix asked. Fashion advice. He grunted, and I said, He doesn't know about the bulla. Felix seemed to breathe easier. though it was also obvious he had used the past half hour to put together a plan of his own. On the other side of the nearest archway was Aurelia, the girl who had ridden with us into Rome. She sneered at me as if the last thing she wanted was to be here. I completely agreed. I had no interest in seeing her either. I folded my arms and angled my body so I could look at Felix, but not have to see her. "That senator's son was a risk," Felix said. "I want you to have a protector." "Her?" I felt like he had slapped me. A kitten could do a better job. "He couldn't find one foolish enough to do it," Aurelia said. "If I didn't need the money, I wouldn't have agreed to do it either." I took Felix's arm and turned him to face the wall. The senator and his son are no threat to me. But if an actual threat comes, do you really think this girl can do anything to help? "Well, I can't exactly hire the Praetorian Guard to watch you, can I?" Felix countered. "The Emperor personal guards? No, I suppose not." He added, "She's stronger than she looks, and nobody will question her being here. Besides, I trust her." But did I trust Felix? He had misled me about Kayla's role in the games. It was possible he was lying now, maybe even likely. Besides, even if I did need help, I doubted Aurelia was the answer, and I had no intention of making anything easy on her. I stomped away and heard her follow behind me. Whatever Felix was paying her to watch over me was like a nursemaid. I decided to make her earn every single coin. So I found work that smelled bad enough to curl her nose hairs. I darted from one end of the hypogeum to the other, dodging around corners or climbing into high places that I was sure she wouldn't be able to reach. I loved the idea of forcing her to go back to Felix and tell him she had given up. But hour after hour, she stayed near me and climbed even higher than I did, just to prove she could. Never speaking a word, only rolling her eyes when I was close enough to notice. Finally, I found a quiet corner and announced to her how I intended to use the space. "That's disgusting," she said. "They've got to have latrines somewhere." "Not for slaves," I said, grinning. "So do you still want to guard me? Keep me safe?" "Don't you want my help anymore?" she asked. "I never wanted it in the first place," I answered. "Obviously, I don't need it either." "You think because you bent the metal in the caravan that you can defend yourself? Can you fight?" I'd been in plenty of fights in the mines. Admittedly, I'd lost most of them, but not all. And besides, the other men were much bigger than me. She wouldn't have done any better. "If a fight starts, I'd sooner beg the crippled widows of Rome for help before asking you," I said. She leapt forward and shoved me against the wall with her forearm pressed against my neck and her knee jammed into my gut. I would have pushed back, but I knew her other hand held a knife, and probably a sharp one. Judging by the glare in her eye, I figured that at that moment, she was the one I most needed protection from. "They tried to sell me into slavery a few years ago, and I fought them off. Do you know why? Because I could. Because I don't give in. I'm not like you, Nick. I don't take orders in exchange for a crust of food." "Sure you do," I said. "Why else are you following me around?" Her face reddened. "I'm doing what I have to." "So am I." My temper flared, and it took effort to keep from yelling. "They kill runaways." I tried not to think about last night's decision to escape with Kayla. "At least the runaway is willing to pay a price for freedom. You're not," she answered with equal fierceness. "My sister is at the mines." I was yelling now, and got control of my temper again. I couldn't leave without her. "Oh." Aurelia released me and turned away. When she looked back, the anger in her eyes had caved into sadness, which she quickly tried to hide. I have nobody. That gave me pause. Even though it was like a stab in the heart to think of Livia, at least we had each other. Aurelia only had a corpundia to remind her she had once belonged to a family, and no longer did. I continued looking into her eyes and watched her fight back tears beneath my gaze. When she wasn't angry, her eyes were sort of pretty. The wall she put up was only her way of hiding the person she really was. Whoever that was, she wasn't the difficult person she pretended so hard to be. I wanted to ask about her family, but figured it would only start another fight. So instead I asked, "Did Felix really hire you to protect me? Or are you here to make sure I don't run?" Because she was definitely interfering with that plan. She waited until some other workers had passed us by, then in a low voice said, "Felix does his job here at the Venatio, but he reports directly to Emperor Tacitus. Whatever you're hiding, he wants it for the Emperor." I looked down. If Crispus was right, then Radolf would be coming after me. The bulla was my only defense. Aurelia poked my arm. "Oh, so you haven't agreed to give it to him?" I started walking away, but she followed. My own shadow didn't stick this close to me. "Who do you think you are?" she said. "They'll kill you for refusing the Emperor's orders. But..." She paused and her eyes narrowed. "Oh, I see." I turned and folded my arms as I faced her. "What?" "Even if you give it to the Emperor, they're still going to kill you." "Why? If I don't have it anymore. This thing that you have, it's special, right?" "Yes, maybe. I don't know." Silently, I groaned. My lying skills were pathetic. "Felix said you can't use it, but you can." Yes. That was only partially true. I could feel the magic. I couldn't use it. Aurelia's eyes softened. "This is Rome. Things are different here, and you must learn to think the way the Empire thinks. They don't want the slaves to have power, and the Emperor certainly doesn't want a slave boy out there who can do something that he can't. So tell me, once you give him this thing, why would Tacitus allow you to live?" Ever since the moment I set foot in the Venatio, a weight had been growing in my chest, and right now it was heavier than ever. She was correct. If I refused to give the bulla to the Emperor, he would order my death. He would do the same if I gave it to him. And whatever choice I made, once General Radolf found out I had it, he would focus the whole of his power on finding me. Every choice was wrong, which really meant I had no choices at all. No way out. No chance. Unless I found a way to escape it. This was Caesar's curse. Chapter 16. Aurelia left soon after our conversation. She said she had stayed for as long as Felix had paid her, and that I seemed determined to ignore her anyway. That might have been true at first, but once she announced she was leaving, things changed. Maybe she was difficult and disagreeable, but so was I at times. And her reasons were every bit as valid as mine. I wished I had a way to ask her to stay. She hated me, obviously. But oddly, that seemed like a good thing. It meant she had no problem with telling me the truth, even if the truth was bad. I needed a friend here. I needed her here. "I doubt you'll be alive by this time tomorrow," she said as she sauntered away. "So don't let them bury you in the city. I live below ground and don't want your body dropping in unexpectedly." I would be alive. I just wouldn't be here. Kayla and I were going to escape tonight. The only question that remained was how to do it. I was no further in my plan than I had been the night before. The problem was that as evening approached, our true work began. Even more animals that had been stored east of the city were now being brought in, which only increased the noise and the stench. "And the danger," added a slave working nearby as he recounted the time a few years ago when several hungry lions had escaped their cage and killed nearly 30 men before they were all recaptured. "But the slaughter down here was nothing to that day's venatio." I shivered at the thought of it and found somewhere else to work. In preparation for the games, the arena was being decorated to look like the jungle from which many of the animals had come, and so we spent the entire night hauling trees and grasses into place and creating sandbars, then filling the low points with water. It spooked some of the older men to see the arena turned into such a foreign setting, but the mines were always creepy, and Caesar's cave worst of all. Compared to that, a fake jungle was nothing. As we worked above ground, other slaves continued their efforts in the hypogeum below. By the time I got down there, it was so thick with caged animals that there was barely room to move, and nothing but stale, foul air to breathe. "All of these are intended for the venatio?" I asked one man, who only grunted his way past me. At this rate, I wondered how long until the world ran out of animals, all for Rome's entertainment. It disgusted me. Dawn rose faster than we were ready for it, and I'd had no chance to get near Kayla's cage, much less figure out a way to break the lock. I wasn't even sure she'd agree to leave. She seemed perfectly content with the gold they had given her. We had barely ended our preparations when Felix sent around orders to allow us each a drink and a bit of food. Nothing was to be given to the animals. The venatio was the first event of the day, and Felix wanted them eager to kill. I skipped the food and surveyed the various routes Kayla and I might take to escape. The obvious choice was the ramp leading to the ground level of the amphitheater, especially since it was the closest to Kayla's cage. But Roman soldiers were positioned at the top of the ramp to keep onlookers from coming down, so I doubted we'd get very far. There were other exits too, including some of the larger lifts that went directly into the arena, but unless I stayed behind, there was nobody to raise it. Besides, the exits weren't the biggest problem. It felt like every slave in Rome had been brought here to assist with the games. Even if I got Kayla out of her cage, there were too many men for us all to fight. Maybe Aurelia was wrong about my death. After all, the Emperor needed me alive in order to operate the bulla. Additionally, nobody seemed to be treating me differently than any other slave. Felix had his eye on me a lot, but he still wasn't shy about barking out orders. As had been the case back at the mines, I worked hard and obeyed every command that made sense. There were good reasons to keep me alive, and an even better one for the Emperor to kill me. The bulla was heavier than ever. The magic in it was growing stronger. I had to get out of this place and take Kayla with me. I could tell from the noises above the amphitheater was filling with people. Time was running out. I began looking for anyone who might have keys to Kayla's cage. If I got a set and then coaxed her out, maybe I could convince the others that I was moving her into place for the hunt. But nobody would believe such an obvious lie. Felix himself had said that Kayla was intended for the middle show. Besides that, the keys were on ropes hung around the supervisors' necks. How exactly was I supposed to steal them from there? Once the games got underway, the tunnels beneath the amphitheater flew into action. It was still morning, and yet with many of us, the humid air rose to boiling temperatures. Further dampening my hopes to escape, I was assigned to work on the upper level of a 2-story lift to send the animals onto the arena floor. We were to push the bars around a rotating capstan that would gradually raise the animal's cage. Once we got the animal to the right level, another group of slaves pulled the cage door open. The animal would instinctively walk the narrow plank toward the light, with no idea it was heading into a battle arena. At first, I refused to help. It wouldn't stop the Venatio, but at least it would allow my conscience to sleep at night. Then I heard a snap and instantly felt a sharp sting on the back of my leg. I collapsed to one knee and turned to see a supervisor below us with a long whip in his hand. "Get up, you fool!" a nearby slave hissed at me. "Do you think they won't kill you?" On the contrary, I was certain they would try. Remembering Kayla, I stood and took my place on the capstan. 3 slaves worked alongside me, with another 4 men turning the same capstan below us. Despite their warnings, the lifting seemed easier than it should have been, and gradually the other men fell away. Without them, it became hard, and I was moving slower than before, but I was doing it. One of them said to me, "How is a boy your age strong enough to do the work of 8 men?" I didn't have an answer for him. No doubt my years in the mines had made me strong, perhaps stronger than many men, but not 8 of them. I felt the warmth of the bulla again, flowing into my back and arms. If it was giving me strength, then it meant I was doing more than just feeling the magic. I was using it. I pushed the bars again, amazed at the surge of energy. Maybe it was only borrowed strength, or stolen strength, since I knew full well the bulla didn't belong to me. But I liked the feel of it. There were dozens of other lifts, all of them working at the same speed, constantly delivering new animals into the arena to fight. I tried not to listen to the noises above, and hated every second of what I was being forced to do. I worked solidly until the announcement went out that the Venatio was over. The animals still alive were being allowed to remain in the arena for the next event. That was the one in which Kayla would participate. We were almost out of time. I turned to the man next to me. "What happens now?" "It's lunchtime for the spectators," he answered with a smile. "Execution of the criminals. It's too bad you can't be up top to see the show to follow. We have an elephant trained to walk a tightrope. I wasn't sure I wanted to know, but I asked anyway. "How are the criminals executed?" He shrugged. "Various ways, depending on the games. Sometimes they make it quick, like a beheading. But the people always enjoy it more when the criminal's death is a part of the entertainment. Today they'll use the jungle setting for more fun. They'll set the criminals loose and unarmed. Some animals up there might find them first. Or I saw a bestiarius wandering around up there too. I imagine he'll go in and hunt for the survivors." "What about the griffin?" I asked. "What's her role?" The man smiled. "She'll go in at the very end, as the finest of all animals versus the strongest of all animal hunters. Your griffin will have to lose, of course. They'll make sure of it. But it's certain to be a great fight." No, there wouldn't be any fight at all. I intended to do everything in my power to get her out of here. Power. On my own, I could do nothing for Kayla. But I had the bulla, and it had magic. All I had to do was figure out how to use it. I really was running out of time, though, and didn't know where to begin. "How many criminals are being executed today?" I asked. "Not many. In fact, they're bringing them in now. The man pointed to the ramp where Roman soldiers were leading a small group forward. I counted 2 men, then a woman, and then my jaw fell slack and might have landed on my chest. The very last man was Sal.